Hey, broken salespeople. Welcome to the workshop, the new workshop that I'm still working on. If you can't tell from the looks of me, covered in sawdust, working on making it a little more presentable for you guys. You're about to listen to an interview I did with Ben Povlow with the Self-Help Company. Excellent interview. I just want to let you guys know there was one point about 50 minutes in where I lost power for a moment. Only lasted a minute or so, but it made me have to break up the interview into two sections. Just be on the lookout for that. It's not over when you hear that little bit of music that I'm planning on putting in and editing. But thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for all your support. Please take the time to subscribe, to review. Both of those help the channel out quite a bit. And I hope you guys enjoy this interview. Hey there, broken salespeople. Welcome to the workshop. My name is Red Staffstrom, and we are here to help you fix your broken sales skills. Today, I am here with Ben Povlow. I got that one right this time, right?
Yep.
Povlow. Okay.
Yep.
Ben Povlow is an author. He wrote the book Self-Help for At-Risk Teens, Teens. He has a ton of material for that as well. He is the founder of the Self-Help Company, selfhelpcompany.com. He was having a lot of different ideas based on what we were talking about. And I want to see if we could help narrow things down for him, help him get to the next step. So Ben, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Okay. Appreciate you having me. Thanks, Red.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah. So I started my company, the Self-Help Company, July 1st, 2020, right dead in the middle of the pandemic because it started because for years it's been weighing on me to give back through my knowledge and my experience of growing up as an at-risk teenager who didn't have any direction and wound up becoming a full-fledged juvenile delinquent and just really went down the absolute wrong path. Now, I lost both my parents at a young age, and I had really no guidance, nobody really trying to lift me up or help me. And I pretty much learned everything the hard way. And it wasn't until I was 28 years old when I was introduced to network marketing that I was introduced to personal development material and self-help and started to attend seminars and reading books. And that was when my whole life changed. And it's information that I wish I knew when I was a teenager because I know it would have changed the whole course of my life. So what I do in my message, and I created the Self-Help Company just to be a resource for me to give back and share what I've learned and plus just my real personal experiences. And basically, I combine my street smarts and my street knowledge with this personal development and specialized knowledge that I've acquired over the years. So I wrote the book that I wish someone would have written for me when I was a teenager.
Okay, so you're really posed as an expert business. You're the person who is able to. You're a few chapters ahead in your journey, and so that you could help at-risk teens that way.
Yeah, because as you know, hindsight's 2020, and you can't see what's going to happen in the future when you're a teenager and you're at risk. You don't have a support system at home, and you don't really know what your future looks like. There's no way to learn unless you do it. Except for now, I'm going and giving you my perspective of how I would have done it differently. Here's the pitfalls to look out for, and just trying to help you avoid going down the same path I went down.
Okay, so there's a good amount to unpack there, but I want to go a little deeper into your story a little first.
Sure.
So you saying you were a juvenile delinquent, didn't have the right direction. How bad was it? Like what kind of activities were you involved in when you were a teenager?
So, all right. So my dad died when I was 10 and my mom died when I was 16. So at the age of 10, I was expelled from elementary school in the fifth grade for discipline and behavior issues. At the age of 13, I started doing drugs. By 14 or 15, I was stealing cars. And by 16, I was a full-fledged drug dealer and I was committing crime on a daily basis to survive. and I was sentenced to 1 to 3 years in a juvenile program. I did 1 year, and then I also spent 11 months with a house arrest bracelet on my leg before that. And after getting out of the juvenile program, within 1 month of going back to the same environment and hanging out with the same people, I wound up in adult prison. And before I knew it, I was in the system. It just like as an adult now, and it just snowballed.
And that's what I want, like I assumed the case was, because there are so many people that hear the phrase juvenile delinquent and thinks it's just like vandalizing bathroom stalls. That wasn't the case for you. You were the 1%ers, like bikers use that phrase, of the 1% that's criminal at that point.
Yeah, what a coincidence.
Okay.
Yeah. I've been riding motorcycles since I was a kid, and I've owned several Harleys, and not all bikers are bad people, but
No, absolutely not. No.
like you said, the 1% make the whole other 99% look bad.
But the 1%, so that's like I recently listened to, because I do all my audiobooks, Hell's Angels by Hunter S. Thompson, and how they've embraced that 1% banner of
Sonny Barger. And
yeah.
And you know what? I lived that life even before I rode a motorcycle.
Yeah.
But then when my mom passed away, I went to live with my cousin, who was my mom's goddaughter. She was only 2 years older than me, but her boyfriend, who's now her husband, he was a full-fledged biker. And so I was immediately thrown into that lifestyle because I lived in their house. Mm-hmm. And he would have all his friends pulling up on Harleys. I went to my first Daytona Bike Week when I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
And I went to Laconia when I was also about 19, because it was the same year. And I was doing all.
And I can see how easy that can be in terms of just making the connections to do things not the right way. And not to kind of give away your age, but how long ago was this that you were at the Laconia, like when you were 18, 19, like how old are you now?
I'm 43, so that would have been like 98. My first bike week was Daytona 98.
Okay. So it calmed down a lot since obviously the 70s, but it still wasn't sunshine and rainbows at Laconia.
No, and you know what? Laconia is a different animal than Daytona, because Laconia is more about the riding, going up to Mount Washington and all that. But Daytona, there's some riding, but there's a whole lot more partying. Because you know, as far when you're in Laconia and you're riding all day, you ride all day, then you party when you get back. Yeah. But in Daytona, you party all day.
And I never understood, as somebody who gets really bad hangovers, the idea of hopping on a Harley for a full day afterwards does not sound fun.
Well, you know what they say, the hair of the dog, and they just get right back on it.
Yeah.
But the thing was, you know, I was thrown into that lifestyle, and that was who I looked up to, because they were the adults in my life. They were bikers. And, you know, and although I did wind up getting a decent union job when I was like 20 years old, because of a girlfriend I had whose brother-in-law was in the painters union, I got into the union, but it didn't last because of using drugs. And I got kicked out of the union. And even though I had good jobs, I didn't have the foundation. I didn't have anybody ever trying to really help me out or lift me up or give me anything positive. So I just always was gravitating back towards that negativity.
Okay. So now let's get more into the business side of things, because that's where, like, I just didn't want to make it sound like I wanted to know how deep that rabbit hole went first. So what does, as of right now, we're 5 months into the self-help company. What does it look like right now? Like, what structure do you have? Is it just you? Have you hired anybody on?
So I'm a single member LLC.
Okay.
So I don't have any employees. It's just me. But my wife's a big help. And, you know, she's, you know, my little mastermind group. So, you know, I bounce a lot of my ideas off her. But the book was published on the last week of September. And so the book is officially out. It's published everywhere. I put it It's everywhere on every major book site.
Did you go traditional publishing or did you do self-publishing?
No, self-publishing. And that was the original reason why I created the company, was to be the publisher of the book.
Yes.
But I'm like, okay, so it's the publisher of the book, but that can't be all it is, you know? And so I said, okay. And when I, was doing my research on how to promote books, of course, podcasting is a great platform. So that's when I started the podcast. So I started the podcast at the end of August, because while the book was still being like formatted and everything was out of my hands, I started with the podcast.
Good.
Basically. And I started by doing the first 19 episodes, going over each chapter. Chapter 1 was episode, well, I did an introduction and then I did, but so that was it. And my thoughts for the business at this point are, I want to get into public speaking.
Yep.
Into personal coaching, and I want to just be able to, I want to create my own products. That's another thing.
Yes.
And so there are my thoughts. And as far as what I think I can do with the company, being as though I am a home-based business. I don't have a brick and mortar. I don't want to have a brick and mortar storefront. And so I understand creating online courses is really popular right now with everyone being home and wanting to learn. So they're my ideas for what I want to do.
I could see one significant hurdle that you have, and it's not an insurmountable one. Your target demographic is at-risk teens who generally don't have a ton of disposable income to invest in self-help.
Right. And that's why I want to keep it to where things don't cost a lot.
Yeah.
And even the public speaking, I don't really want to get paid right now. I just want to do it.
And that's the right mentality to have right now, is to offer to speak at schools and things like that. I think that is
freezing up on you.
Are you? Are we freezing up?
You're good.
Okay. So
you're good now.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of doing it for free until you get referrals and testimonials.
Yeah.
Leveraging them first. But the target demographic can't be your end user, is going to be the tricky part. Because your target demographic won't necessarily be the teens themselves. Your target demographic is the parents and teachers, is the people who want to help. Because those are the people who are going to be your customers.
Right. And that's my thoughts are, originally when I started thinking about wanting to get out there, it's trying to get in with organizations. So whether it be like, for example, I haven't reached out to anyone, but like a Big Brother, Big Sister, or Boys and Girls Clubs of America, or the United Way, or someone who has an organization where if I go in and speak and they like my speaking style, or they like my message, they like my story, then maybe they put me on a retainer and say, okay, go speak in Florida and go speak in Georgia, to places. These are companies that have locations all around the world or wherever. And that maybe then it would lead to money. But at this point, I'm not focused on the money.
No. And that's the right mentality to have right now, is, but you have to have the plan, so to speak, for the money down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you're thinking of, I think public speaking is probably the first avenue to go down, especially now that you have the book published. And hopefully we could get the book to a point where that is profitable. How have your sales been on the book so far?
They've been slow and steady. The more I get the word out, it has been selling, but not in, big chunks or nothing. It's onesie twosies right now. But the thing is, I'm excited because I don't know the people who are buying it. So it's not like it's friends and family, because I ordered a bunch of copies and I gave it to all my friends and family. So the sales are coming from people I don't know, which makes me excited, because people are reading my message. They're liking it. And even the people I've sent it to, which were friends that are into self-help and stuff, are giving me really great feedback. So I know I'm on the right track.
Okay. So at that point, you have the content covered, that's one of the hardest things to really come down with. And you have the target demographic, you have the customer avatar that you really need, because you're doing all of these things right. So if nothing else, I want you to take that away.
Yeah, no, and the one thing that I will tell you, I'm somewhat struggling with is staying on that avatar. Is because I have a tendency when I'm doing my podcast and I'm talking about individual topics like whether it's self-esteem or setting goals. I'm trying to keep that avatar in my mind, and I'm saying teenager. I'm saying everything that you would say in an adult world, like business, you would say at work or on your job or on your business. I just replace them with the word school, you
Yeah.
know. But the thing is, like, I have a tendency to not use the at-risk part, and it's coming off as more of a generic for any teenager, which I don't. I know I need to have like a micro niche. Like I want the at-risk teen to be my niche. I don't want to be a broad, this is for every teenager type thing.
That's the right mentality. The tricky thing is, I think you need to change the branding when you're talking, especially on podcasts.
Hmm.
I've never met a teen who identifies themselves as at risk.
Right.
It,
Yeah.
it's you have to understand how to speak to the tricky thing that you have is that, again, your customer is going to be different than the people you really want to get to. The people who are going to cut a check for you are going to be drastically different than the lives that you actually want to change.
Hmm.
um so how do you speak to both when they are drastically different people?
Right.
You're the people who you're going to be reaching to, the people who are going to cut a check to you, are the people who read self-help books.
Right.
But you have to have a message that resonates with a 16-year-old who just stole his first car.
Yeah.
Although stealing cars nowadays is a lot tougher than it used to be.
I would imagine so.
Yeah, well, I work on cars, so
I would
I'm trying to
try it.
trying to
Not to
work around an ignition nowadays, and
not to mention everything's on camera. You can't
that too.
do anything in this world. It's like Big Brother's watching, So I don't know why anybody would even attempt it. But I guess now with the COVID, the masks make it appealing. You don't that people can't recognize you. But
Well, I was just thinking about this. What is the risky behavior that you see nowadays? Because I know me growing up in the 90s, the at-risk behavior was pretty much exactly what you were saying. Was drug dealing, was stealing cars, was getting into fights, joining gangs, things like that. Now with things being online, I think it's a drastically different at-risk activities. I think a lot of it would be things like almost cybercrime.
yeah, you would think that, but and you're right, but you got to remember, although we feel like COVID's never going to end,
It
it
will.
and and the thing about it is the people who are breaking the law don't care about COVID. So while everybody's locked in their house, they're out there still stealing your stuff.
But,
But aside from that, it's the in-person classroom in school. In schools, there's a lot of bullying and there's a lot of, drug use still is very prevalent. And so, you know, in the book, I start by saying what causes you to be at risk, and then what are you at risk of, to give them to create that awareness, because like you said, most of them don't identify to in their own mind,
yeah,
and most of the time they don't realize it until it's too late.
yeah. But I still think you may want to tweak the branding, especially when you're speaking to people, because that comes the brand, the at risk doesn't jump off the plate for like you may want to relaunch, like do a book very similarly down the line for self-help for bad boys kind of, and that's a very it's a very clumsy way to do it, but you need to talk about it in a way that they self-identify.
Gotcha. Well,
And
I
bad
am.
boy isn't really the best term anyway, but
Yeah,
to come across too clinical, I think is going to be your biggest Achilles heel when it comes to speaking.
I got you. Yeah, I already have an outline for a second book. Actually, I already was thinking about it, and I was going to have it in like a series, and I was going to have the titles all to be somewhat similar, but even self help is not something that's appealing to them. So I'm learning as I go. and I'm definitely going to kind of, even though I still want the at-risk teen, I guess what you're saying is present it in a different way.
If so, I break down motivation 3 different ways, and I think on the episodes that you listened to, autonomy, mastery, purpose. I love the purpose of your business, and I love that like the work that you're trying to do is excellent work, but the messenger, you need to make sure the message is actually getting through to them.
Yeah, I understand, but you don't think I should be targeting my message towards like the counselor or the parent, right? Or no? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think you need to find a way to bridge that gap between them a certain way. You need to be able to relate, but it's going to be very, very difficult to help both people. The counselor is going to be your ultimate customer. So just so you know, I work with, and I mentioned it before when we were talking before, I work with Jared James Coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And he does real estate coaching, but he doesn't do it in the suit and tie and the mustard color blazer of yesteryear.
Right.
He does it in gym clothes because his target demographic, and the one that we're generally going after, is the 30 to 35-year-olds who have been in the business 2 to 3 years.
Right.
He says things in a very blunt, very direct way without a lot of clinical talk. Regardless of what you think about Donald Trump, and we don't need to get into that, the one thing he does very, very well is keep things very simple in very small, very direct terms with high emotional engagement. I have a very difficult time with that.
Yeah.
When I say that, my mind goes to the Flesh Kincaid scale.
Right.
Which most people don't know what that is. But it's literally making sure that you can speak to people on a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th grade level, whatever target demographic you want to go for.
Yeah.
For at-risk teens, you need to be able to speak at a 4th grade level.
Yeah.
For counselors who have, in many cases, a master's degree, they have a very different vernacular.
Right.
So how do you target your marketing where you can help both?
Right.
And that's going to be, and that's got to be the biggest hurdle that we have to overcome for you.
Yeah.
Figuring out the language that will appeal to the end user that you want to have, but also the people who are going to pay $15.95 for a book.
Right. Yeah. I mean, one of the people who recently read the book, a business person, their response was, wow, every teacher, every school counselor needs this book. Every parent needs this book to give to the kid, because parents are not equipped to handle a lot of the situations that kids are dealing with, and even the counselors as a tool to give to the kids. One of the reasons why I felt qualified to do this is because of the personal experience.
Absolutely.
And doing my research, I found that almost all the books that are out there for this target audience are written by psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors, people with all these letters behind their names who have never lived it.
Absolutely. But I'm wanting to ask you a question right now. Do you need to be the person who helps the teens, or do you need to be the person who trains people who help the teens?
Well, I had a thought a while back to get reformed prisoners or people who've just got out of prison to create a whole army of people to go out and share inspirational stories and stuff. Now, I don't know that I feel like the biggest thing is not the actual, it's the story. That's the whole thing, is being able to say, I did this and I know what could happen if you do this, and it's the personal experience. It's not really the book knowledge, because anyone could go buy a book on self-esteem, on self-image. So that's why throughout my book, I mix in all of my own personal experiences and stuff to really relate to them, to say, look, I've been through this. I know what you're going through. So I don't know that, I mean, I can create an army of people who have grown up this way, who have now changed their ways. And maybe that was the thought I had. Now,
The tricky thing with that from a business perspective, and it's something that I've seen with coaching specifically, is you almost need them to kind of sign an NDA, because if they become really good at speaking to people that way and training them, and they can kind of take your own customers from you. Does that make, like, if they become the messenger, then they no longer need you.
yeah, yeah, that's true. And
That's the one thing, the big red light that I see there. My
yeah,
thought process is your business, the person that you relate to, might be the counselor than it is the teen.
yeah, I mean, that's a good idea. And I mean, as the self-help company, I could have that whole uh, group of people that say work for me, that
Mhm.
go out and speak along the same lines, like, but with their own story.
See, the way I'm seeing it is you do training specifically to like school counselors. Like those are your coaching students more than anything else.
Counselors.
Yeah, I think that, so you're still going to be helping at-risk teens, you're just going to have a degree of separation, and that's going to be the best way for your message to actually spider out.
I see what you're saying. So
Yeah.
you're so I would teach them what they didn't learn in school.
Exactly. You're going to teach them the grimy details of what it's actually like, what these kids are actually experiencing when they're not reading a list of symptoms off of a DARE website when they talk about doing coke.
Right.
You're telling them what it actually makes you feel like that feeling of invincibility that you had when you did it.
Right.
So you're able to take that and teach them ways to empathize with the kids. That's more the person that I think you'll relate to as being somebody who turned your life around, and what advice that they need to pass on.
Mm.
But I'm going to be kind of blunt here, but 43 years old with a mustache and a polo is not going to relate to a 16-year-old who's, you know, stealing his grandmother's pills.
Yeah.
That's not the person that you're going to relate to, and it's not the best customer from a business perspective either.
Mm.
What you need is your diehard fans who buy into what you're doing, and yes, that could turn into speaking at events for teens, but I think your ultimate customer will be the counselors.
Mm. Okay.
And I think that's who you'd relate to so much more. And I love the idea of getting involved with Big Brothers, getting involved with United Way, getting involved in these charities. That is something that I would suggest you start doing and volunteering at almost immediately.
Okay.
Um, get used to speaking their language. Not so
Yeah.
much the kids, but the people who are helping the kids.
Right.
And give them the tools they need, because typically they're drastically underpaid and don't have the tools that they need to actually accomplish what they want to.
Mm.
Um,
Okay.
but and eventually you can start doing getaways for those kinds of, but that's the group you want to work with, I think.
Okay.
The good thing is you're still accomplishing your purpose, but you're creating spiders that your message is going to spider out, but you don't have to have all these people on payroll.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it.
Yeah,
That's good
that
stuff.
is, I think, the direction to go is, and you'll relate much better to them than you
Hmm.
will relate to, again, Braden, who's 15 years old.
Yeah.
Um, I think I would have a tough time, like, and big bearded guy in a t-shirt. I'm not sure I can reach teens.
Yeah.
It's just a very, You're never going to be Haley Jenner. I hate to tell you if that was your dream.
I don't know who that is, but I know.
And that's the point exactly. um, it, and it's not somebody that I want to know, but that, like, keeping up with the Kardashians.
Yeah. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult for you to emulate that and speak to them. Eventually, you could find influencers who can help you with your messaging,
Yeah.
who can speak to people that way. But I think right now your target demographic is going to be big brothers, big sisters.
So I got you, and I like it. I definitely like it, and I see that there's definitely more money to be made in that arena too. But in addition to that, do you think I should also create um, whatever this is, product coaching, whatever, new book, whatever? Do you think I should also target the parents, or just
Absolutely.
the
But
parents and the counselors together as like one? Like,
I think the counselors are going to be your better avenue.
okay,
And the reason is because the counselors are going to tell the parents what to look at for.
okay,
You don't want to talk to one parent at a time. You want to talk to one counselor, one social worker who
mm,
knows 15 parents who need help. That's going
gotcha.
to spider out much more effectively for you. That doesn't mean that you don't help you don't help parents. But I
Yeah,
think by so you said that you've done real estate before.
yeah,
Okay, you can find one listing or one investor who's going to buy 6 houses a year.
that makes sense. Yeah,
Which would you rather do?
yeah,
Both are reliable strategies, but one has much more growth to it because you're getting in front of somebody who knows 5 potential book buyers for you.
right. Yeah, I got you. That
Th-
makes sense.
So that I see as a much more feasible strategy for you for your book.
Okay.
And then with your podcast, I like your podcast, the one you've done now, the Self Help for At Risk Teens podcast. That one is going to target specifically, that's going to target the counselors, the people who are helping, the social workers, the people in the juvenile system.
So then I need to craft the message more towards them.
Towards them, yes. That's the demographic you want because then it'll spider out a lot more. Eventually, what you want to do is create a second podcast
Hmm.
that's specific, that you're not the voice of. Then you're going to want somebody who 23 to 25 years old, who just got out, who made these mistakes, who you were able to help. That's because that's the business partner that you kind of need right now, in my mind. I'm not saying they need to be a pure business partner that everything's 50-50, but you need somebody who has again, we were talking about it a little bit before we started. You're a high D, a type I personality. You're going to need somebody with a bit of a softer touch.
Yeah.
You're going to need somebody, I assume, like your wife. I assume your wife is a high ass, a steady personality. She's going to be the dove to your eagle.
Hmm. Yeah.
You need a 23-year-old. I again, stereotypically speaking, I'd probably want a woman. Somebody.
And and that person would be who? Like a spokesperson?
She's
Like,
going to be the person who speaks directly to teens for you.
okay.
Okay. That's how you could get the message to the teens, but you're going to want somebody that you can help train her. And I'm saying her right now because that's the person I'm picturing. Um, that you can help train her in how to reach teens, all the clinical knowledge that you have, and she's going to be the mouthpiece.
Okay.
So she's going to be the empathetic ear, the big sister figure
Hmm.
to help actually speak to at-risk teens. You don't have to be the celebrity on that side, but you have to help make her that person.
Okay. And I was just thinking, well, let's just say we have that ideal person, but also add a man to it too, a boy and a girl. Have one of each. They each can speak to, whatever.
It's entirely
But
up to you, but
yeah,
I think you need somebody with a more empathetic touch who can skew a little younger from a demographic perspective.
yeah,
That's going to be down the line, though.
gotcha.
That's not something for you to worry about now. It's just something to keep your eye out for. You find a bartender kind of person, like a waitress who is struggling because she's got 2 kids at home. And made
And
bad choices when she was younger, got involved with the wrong crowd, and now she's trying to work her way out of it.
so to do the podcast,
To do the So you're still going to do self-help for at-risk teens. That is going to be targeted towards the counselors.
okay.
What you're going to want is something that's going to speak directly, because I know that this is a passion project for you. You are going to want to see the teens' lives that you change, because that's going to be part of what gives you that shot in the ass.
Gotcha.
I think that's the best way to craft the message for them. That's probably going to be 6 months out, would be my assumption. But by doing that, by finding that person, you'll actually be able to start talking about those success stories. And you'll
Mhm.
start seeing those. And now it becomes this cycle, because you've got those 2 clients. You're going to have the success story of the teens who've turned their lives around. And those are going to come from her podcast, quote unquote.
Mm.
Then you're going to also have the counselors feeding you stories. And then the more stories you have, the more you're going to be able to sell. And the more you're going to be able to help people. The more your lag measure is lives changed, which is a very, very ambitious lag measure.
Hmm.
But it has to start the right way.
Okay.
Okay. But I don't see you being able to speak directly to teens. That's the biggest obstacle you have right now.
Okay.
Uh,
So what I want to do, and we can talk more about it later, but I want to send you a copy of the book.
Absolutely. I'd love to read it.
I want you to read the book and see what you think about the perspective now, because even though I can't, in your what you're saying is I shouldn't be the one speaking directly to the teen. I want you to see if you think the book speaks to the teen,
Yes.
because that's where I feel like, okay, I may not have to speak out loud on the podcast directly to the teen, but hopefully you'll see that the book does speak to the teen.
Okay.
If the book can do the speaking for me, then all I need to do is get the counselors to promote the book or something like that.
The issue you're going to have is most at-risk teens, because I haven't quite figured out the better term for that yet, are not big readers.
Yeah. Well,
That's the
part
issue.
of why I thought about doing the same content in the podcast, and I keep the episodes short so that hopefully they would at least listen to that versus if they didn't read the book.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways that we can go.
Okay.
The fact that the biggest problem I see when I talk to entrepreneurs is they don't know what they really want to solve more than anything else. And you do, which is a great thing. They didn't start with a product, they started with a solution. They started with a problem that they wanted to solve. That's the best thing you have going for you right now. And you have a story that really resonates. It's just, how do we get the teens to actually adopt it and start listening? I think your story will relate much more to the counselors, and let the counselors tell the story.
Okay.
Okay. Because that's going to make a much bigger emotional impact on them, and it will spider everything out.
Okay.
Um, And then you're just a collector of stories. You've got your own, and now you just get more and more and more and more.
Mhm.
I would my first step would be volunteering.
Okay.
Get to know the people who are in the trenches with kids who have problems.
Yeah.
Become
Yeah.
the expert in the struggles that they are having in terms of actually reaching kids.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually, that thought came to mind after I was interviewed not too long ago by another podcaster, and he asked, "What experience did I have working with kids of this nature?" And I said, "None, except for, I speak to the kids I meet and know personally." But then after, it almost immediately clicked in my head, like, oh, I need this real life experience of working with them.
You're too many degrees away. You're like there's too many degrees of separation between you and the 16-year-old.
Well, not necessarily,
Okay.
because I'm a stepfather to a 13-year-old girl,
Mm.
and I have other family members who are um, from a broken home and have been raised in certain unfortunate situations. So I have some people that I do know personally, that I do talk to personally, but not on that scale of
Mhm.
the bigger groups.
Yeah. I would reach out to Big Brothers Big Sisters, reach out to juvenile detention centers.
Yeah.
Going to be another big one for you. Start getting that tribe of
Yeah.
people, so that you learn how to relate to teens too.
Yeah.
Even if you aren't the one to do it down the road, you have to understand how to do it. So as you're finding people, you need to help them craft their message.
Yeah.
What works, what doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's going to be step one, is spend some time in the trenches. Be the
Yeah.
swinging the hammer rather than the general contractor.
Yeah. No, it's definitely something that I do think is spot on, because I had this thought of doing this, and then with COVID, I didn't really want to get myself into, like, going into facilities like this, because I know it's like a hot spot to
Th-
be in these congregated areas and all. So I was a little reluctant, but it was part of my plan to do it once, things got a little better, but I might have to kind of accelerate.
yeah, I hate to say it, but now is the time more than ever that they need a compassionate voice, because they're on lockdown so much more than they normally would.
Yeah.
Now is absolutely the time to be doing it. I know it's a little risky, and I know there's probably people who are going to tell you that it's the wrong idea.
Yeah.
But I do think now is the time more than ever. So the reason podcasts work is because you become the only voice in their ears.
Right.
That's what you're looking now, because everybody else is seeing these juvenile detention facilities as at-risk areas. That's giving you so much more, like, of a monopoly on their thought process.
Hmm.
I'm not telling you it's not without risk. It absolutely is. And I'm not sure it's something that it's knowing people that I do. I have a couple of cousins who, well, I've got a couple of cousins on both sides of the bars in prison. I've got some at DOC, some who are incarcerated.
Yeah.
But that is something that I think, start speaking to teens directly as much as possible and learn to be the expert in getting the message to them, because otherwise you won't be able to teach the social workers, how to pass on that message.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. And it's definitely a thought that had crossed my mind. And I even have, like, put on my website that I'm available for speaking, but only through virtual. Like, I'd be willing to do a video, a live stream, or create an actual video custom for their group. But I really was reluctant to get out there in person with COVID. Like, it's definitely part of my plan. It's definitely something I wanted to do, but with COVID, I didn't want to be out there.
And to be fair, some of these things are going to take you 6 months to actually get the wheels to grip on in some cases.
Yeah.
So Big Brothers Big Sisters volunteering, that's something you can do pretty quickly. But getting into the juvenile facilities, that's going to take some time anyway.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I'll tell you is years ago, now this was a lot of years ago, I tried to do Big Brothers and Big Sisters to become an actual Big Brother, and they denied me because of my criminal record.
Yeah.
So now I'm not a convicted felon as an adult, but I do have a whole pretty lot of other stuff going on. And so there may be some, friction.
And if it's not Big
Oh,
Brothers Big Sisters, there's plenty of other organizations.
oh yeah, yeah. And I only use them as an example.
Yeah.
But because I've come across other programs, wilderness camps and other programs, and even like in my state where I live in North Carolina, I've already come across them because just in doing Google searches and just with the term at-risk teens and stuff, I'm already have a lot popping up that I've identified. I just haven't reached out to any of them yet.
Yeah.
And, I really felt like I'm trying to be like strategic about how I do things. Like I wanted the book to be out. I wanted the podcast to be established so someone can actually go and listen to how I speak and what my messages are to be able to see if I'm someone they want to come work with them.
And as a credibility, for credibility, it's absolutely vital that you do those things. And you're right on that one. But now we have to build your credibility in a different way.
Okay.
So now look at Big Brothers Big Sisters may overlook the criminal history because you're also an author now.
Okay.
So you've built the credibility, and now it's a little bit more like, so look at that as step one. Now step two is figuring out a new area of expertise. It's actually being boots on the ground, being the person swinging the hammer.
Right.
Then we start to pivot it into doing consulting, coaching for the counselors themselves. But
Okay.
you're going to have a tough time relating to them if you don't have boots on the ground experience.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you're trying to be a bridge between two worlds with an excellent story, and I think you have a ton of things that you can provide, but you haven't learned how to communicate with those two groups yet.
That makes sense.
Now you have to, so the message that you want to get across, which is extremely difficult for most entrepreneurs. Now you have to learn how to speak the language and become fluent in the two languages you need to speak, which is teenager, counselor.
Yeah.
So that's the direction I would tell you to go. Find organizations, help, and learn how to speak, become fluent first.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
But
no, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's definitely helpful. Yeah.
So, but I mean, I love your message. I love what you're doing. I love the purpose behind it. Everything I love. It's just about finding the right strategy to actually get the purpose accomplished.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it all sounds really good. And I mean, I'm definitely going to implement it, and I'm going to get the ball rolling as far as, reaching out to the places that are basically closest to me within a couple hours of driving. Like I said, I've already identified a few of them where, I may need, see, the part of the hesitation is I don't want to ruin my chances by not approaching them the right way the first time. So that was another thing, was like, do I need like a real media kit? Do I need like to be more professional, or do I just need to mail them a copy of the book to the director and, with a little note? I don't know necessarily how to approach them, and I don't want to ruin my chances by doing it the wrong way the first time.
Yeah. No matter what, some people it's going to rub the wrong way. Be okay with that. If you haven't pissed some people off, you aren't trying hard enough.
Yeah. I don't want to ruin my chances.
No, but
the first, like, I want to learn more about how the initial approach should go.
So a big thing I've learned in sales, ask.
Yeah, I
Ask how
know.
people want to be approached. Say, hey, this is the goal that I want to do. I want to have some, and in order to do that, I believe I need some volunteer experience. What would be the best way in order for me to get that? Even if they won't help you, like if you piss somebody off, ask them what the best way is to move forward. Like, okay, so obviously somewhere in here I went about this the wrong way. How would you want me to approach you?
Right.
And
Yeah, I mean,
they'll give you that feedback, and now you know how to do it the next time. But pick
okay.
3 of them close
Yeah,
and start with that, and then tweak as you need to.
okay.
All right. Don't worry about it being perfect. It's not going to be. It just isn't. But right now, what you're selling is free help.
Yeah,
Free help from a published author who's an expert in this topic, who has the life experience to change lives. That's all you're offering right now at 0 cost.
yeah.
Be willing to do the dirty work. Hey, I don't care if you need me to throw a load of towels in. I'm here to help and learn.
Okay.
And you do that 1 or 2 days a week. I'm not telling you to get like 1 or 2 days a week.
Yeah.
And then you start learning from there, and you become really close, and you start learning the language of both the teenagers and of the counselors.
Okay.
That's the fluency you need right now.
Yeah. Learn the lingo. Gotcha.
Because I know, like real estate, when you were in real estate, if I said FISBO, me and you are the only people who know what that is.
Yeah.
Expired, me and you are the people who know what that. Hey, broken salespeople. Sorry about that. The quick technical issue. We are still here with Ben, going over how he's able to help at-risk teens. We were talking about lingo really quickly and how to actually approach the volunteer jobs and how we can help him get into those positions. So you were concerned about actually being able to get in the door in those places and burning some bridges a little too early.
Yeah, it's just one of the things that have been coming to my mind where I'm trying, and it might be, I might be overthinking it, but I'm just trying to be strategic. I was trying to, like I said, if it's a big organization or an important organization, not necessarily size wise, but like because they're close to home and they're the ones I want most, I don't want to ruin that chance by initially approaching them the wrong way.
Well, here's the thing. You're not going to be approaching the national office. Like, you're not going to approach Big Brothers, Big Sisters corporate yet.
Right. Yeah.
Have you ever seen the show Duck Dynasty? Are you familiar with it at all?
Of course.
Okay. So the way that they got their millions and the way they started being able to sell duck calls the way they were is the father got into Walmart, one store with 5 orders. That was it. He helped out. He got an order at a single Walmart, and now he was able to go to Walmart corporate with the invoice in hand.
I see. Get your foot in the door local.
Yeah. So you don't need to. You just need to find one Big Brothers, Big Sisters willing to say yes, even with the criminal history.
Gotcha.
Once you get that, now you can start learning the people to reach out to at corporate and grow from there.
Right.
That's the direction to go. Same thing with the United Way. You become a volunteer there, and you'll start hearing the right names. You'll start hearing the right emails. You'll start learning how to reach out to them and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is my book. I think it will help a lot of these counselors out. I'm willing to sell you my book at cost.
Gotcha.
Do that and get it in the hands of all these therapists, all these counselors. Then you can start turning in, like, getting more profits. Yeah. But the book is not going to be a big profit center for you. The book is a credibility builder. It's basically a resume that you put on really fancy paper.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Once you have that, it's going to be a lot easier to get things to start to roll.
Yeah.
But all you need to do is get into the one Walmart.
Yeah.
Then you'll start learning, okay, the head of HR is Teresa at the main
Yeah.
office in Spokane, Washington, wherever it is. I have no clue. I'm just guessing a city.
Gotcha.
But now you'll start learning those decision makers, and it's not going to be a cold call anymore.
Uh-huh. I see.
Yes. But you
So
have to
my
get your foot in the door
approach,
first.
right. So my initial approach is not I want to come in and speak to your group. It's I want to volunteer.
And quite frankly, you're going to suck at speaking when you start anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I have a little bit of experience, but I'm sure I'm not going to be the smoothest in town. But I mean, but
Well,
see,
but when I say that, I mean that as you don't know the lingo yet, like we were talking about. The
that
FISBOs, the expireds, like you need to know those inside baseball terms in order to relate to them from a stage.
well, that's true. Yeah, no, I understand that part of it. And see, this is why what you're telling me is very helpful because had you not said that, even though I had the idea of volunteering, that wasn't going to be how I led my approach. My approach was going to be I have a book that I think can help the kids. I'd like to come and speak to the group
Yeah.
right away. Like that's how I was. That was my thoughts. Even though volunteering is in the back of my mind, my approach was going to be let me mail you a copy of my book and then let me know if you want me to come speak.
No, that's to start by being seen as a problem solver within those organizations. Learn what headaches they are having specifically,
Mm,
and then solve those headaches.
yeah, and what you're telling me makes a lot of sense. And I am in this for the long haul,
Yeah.
but understand this is going to be a long process.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I want to get to multiple organizations. So for me to do this process with multiple organizations is going to be a time consuming job.
Absolutely it will. But the way I'm trying to structure this is going to be a critical mass business. It's going to be very tough, but eventually it hits the tipping point and everything's going to start coming at once.
Right.
And you're going to have to know how to scale very, very quickly when you hit that point.
Yeah.
But right now, we have to start putting the weight on so that you eventually tip.
Yeah.
That's going to be the hardest part. You're in the grind right now.
Yeah.
It's going to be a part eventually you're going to look back on with and be like fondly remember, but you are going to hate for the next 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
point blank, you're going to hate it for the next 3 to 6 months.
Yeah. I'm fine with that part.
But once you start learning those relationships, you start learning the exact problems that they are having, it's a lot easier to start communicating. You're a lot more effective on stage
Yeah.
because you can tell those inside jokes that nobody else can.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to just ask the person, what problems do you have? But I guess what you're saying is learn it firsthand versus just have someone tell it to
It's kind of like asking, like, how are you doing?
you.
People don't admit that they're having problems to strangers.
Yeah. Yeah. I got you.
You need to earn the right for them to confide in you first.
That's true.
Yeah. That would be my recommendation is to start with that. And then once you learn all of those things, it's easy to learn the problems because I forgot if it was Clorox or Tide, or it was one of the big laundry like detergent conglomerates. For years, everybody talked about having the brightest whites and the brightest colors, the whitest whites. That's all anybody talked about.
Right.
Until they actually did a study and they started to watch people do laundry. And they saw that the very first thing they did was take that laundry and bring it up to their nose. They didn't care so much about the whitest whites. They didn't care so much about the brightest colors. That's just what they thought was the right thing to say.
Right.
What they cared about was the way the laundry smelled when it first came out of the dryer.
Okay.
It's the same idea that Henry Ford. If I asked people what they wanted, they would have told me they wanted faster horses.
Right.
Even if they tell you the problems they're having, you won't, that doesn't mean it's the actual problem they're having.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. Without being the boots on the ground, you don't really know what the headaches are.
Yeah.
And until then, like, again, you promote the book, you promote the podcast. Gradually that starts, like, the wheels start to grip. But when that happens, you're going to have to be able to scale pretty quick.
Yeah.
Those are going to be good problems to have, but it's going to be very hectic when they do.
That's where training the other people comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can be one place at one time.
Mm-hmm. And you're going to have to hire admins. You're going to have to hire people who can help make your schedule for you.
Yeah, I got you on that. But you know, it just came to my mind while I'm boots on the ground volunteering. That's where I'm going to meet my 23-year-old prospect who's going
Absolutely.
to be my protege.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have that experience too.
Yep. And they're going to know, and they're going to be able to relate. And so you said you have a 13-year-old stepdaughter.
Yeah.
You ever tell her something 50 times, she didn't listen, and then her best friend tells her the exact same piece of advice and she listens?
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
that's why you need that's why you need the 23-year-old.
Yeah, and I understand that, but in that same exact example, I feel like that's why my book and me and my book, whether you hear me on the podcast or in the book, is good for the parent to give the kid, because the kid won't listen to the parent 50 times, but if I say it to them, maybe they'll listen. That was my thought.
And it will, but it's still a parent figure.
Yeah.
You still need somebody. You need not just the coach to say it, you need the best friend to say it.
That's true.
The peer group is so much more powerful.
So the age gap is never going to. I'm never going to be able to solve the age problem by myself.
I'm not going to say never.
Well, not by myself.
Yeah, I'm not going to say never. There can be a way that you can relate to kids. But right now it's going to be much more difficult. And I'm not sure that you're trying to grow a business. You're not trying to be the person to do everything.
Right.
You're there to speak to your strengths, which are an amazing story that can impact a lot of lives.
Right.
But the same way you have your wife who does a lot of help from the probably admin side of things,
right,
is my assumption, you're going to need people to pick up your weaknesses, pick up your slack.
Mm-hmm.
And the slack that I see very quickly is you come across like a history teacher.
Mm.
Not that there's something wrong with that, but the kids don't always listen to their history teachers.
Well, I can get a little scruffy and put on a t-shirt, but yeah. I mean that part I understand. That when I do my podcast and stuff, my videos, I do dress down a little bit.
Absolutely.
But I don't really care what I look like, as far as, whether I look good or bad, whatever. That doesn't matter to me. I feel like as long as the way I talk is relatable to them, then that's what's most important. And I try to do that. And you'll see throughout the book, I try to, I don't craft I don't try to talk like a teenager. All I
No,
use
and
a little
that's
bit of
I don't believe you should fake it by any stretch. If you
no,
are not, but there is a certain point where you have to, I don't see anything as a problem. Like, you've got a Harley Davidson tattoo, wear a Harley Davidson t-shirt.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
do that. Like, and I'm assuming you have a half dozen of those anyway.
Oh yeah, and I have no problem with doing that, and I generally do just wear a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Now, I assumed I was coming on the business podcast. I thought I needed to, dress up a little bit, but then, you know,
Yeah. The fact I look like an orange Chewbacca doesn't give me away that I'm not
yeah,
the normal business podcast.
yeah, and now I see why you how you know the Duck Dynasty crew. You might be a cousin.
No, really, it's just branding for me.
Yeah,
This sets me apart from everybody else.
yeah,
Nobody else looks like Yukon Cornelius from the old Rudolph cartoon the way I do.
yeah.
But for me, my brand is the anti-sales brand. The Mike Ferries of the world, which you mentioned quickly before, I am the antithesis of that. The old school pick up the phone and beat it up until like people say yes. I don't believe in that. I'm much more relationship focused. If I want you to trust me, I don't dress up like a politician.
Yeah.
That's just my philosophy, because I think it hurts more than it helps.
Well, now let me ask you this. I can understand what you're saying in regards to speaking directly to the kids, but what about when I'm talking to the counselors and the parents?
No, now you've got the perfect, like right now, I would still be be you. I would
Well,
still,
I mean, this is me. When I need to get dressed, I do it.
yeah.
I wore a suit and tie for many years as a real estate agent and
Yep.
stuff. I mean, I dress for the occasion.
Yeah.
So, it's I wear t-shirts all day long being locked in the house. But I feel like I should be catering to the audience.
Yeah. That's what I
So,
was going to say, is mirror your customers. And that's
yeah,
something I don't know yet.
yeah. But
When you go and you're with big brothers, big sisters, wear what they're wearing. Dress the way they do.
yeah, which I would assume is a polo or something. I don't see
Yeah.
them in suit ties. I don't know. But
Yeah.
okay.
But
Is that
dress the way they dress. Dress the way they
right?
are comfortable.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Be like, it's the same concept when you were selling real estate, as you have to mirror your prospect.
Yeah.
If they're wearing polos all the time, wear a polo. If they are going there and because they're shooting hoops all day, they're doing it in a plain t-shirt and a pair of gym shorts, okay. But you need to mirror the way they look
Mm-hmm.
and be somebody that they could see working alongside.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they wear. Like, if when you're talking to social workers, okay, and they have to wear a suit and tie because of dress code, okay, that doesn't mean okay, so maybe you do a button up and you have the collar open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That makes sense.
But if they're your target audience, which I think it has to be, mirror them.
Okay.
Okay. I unless they're working for a government agency, I don't think many of them are wearing suits and ties every day anyway.
Gotcha.
In fact, like, knowing my buddies who've, like, I think it's like, I even know buddies who work in probation that they're required to wear a tie because it's the state, like, that's the state policy. Okay, so you're wearing a choking hazard with criminals. That doesn't sound brilliant. And telling them they're going back to jail.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
got you.
But yeah, dress the way they do.
Yeah.
You know?
Makes
Yeah. I don't be a character, be the person that you think they need to know.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, but we've got the steps. We've got it.
Yeah.
Start reaching out, start volunteering, start doing that research that you need to know how to speak to them.
Yeah.
Start learning the right people you need to speak to within those communities, because those are very tight-knit communities.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have that and you start learning those people, then we can start actively selling. But you're doing it from, hey, I'm a volunteer at branch number 842, as
Right.
opposed to, hey, I have a book and I want you to pay me to start speaking.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a much warmer welcome for you.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, it's spot on. I mean, I had the thoughts, but I didn't have the process.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to probably put the cart before the horse and just go kicking in the door and stuff. But like you said, I think being a little more methodical about it
Mm-hmm.
makes more sense.
Yeah, that's the direction I would suggest going. So, did you freeze up?
You had froze for a second, but you're
Okay.
good.
All right. So before we have technical issues again,
Yeah.
why don't you let people know where they could find you, where they could reach out if they are interested in your speaking? I know you're obviously happy to do that as well too, but where do they go to get a hold of you?
So basically, my website is theselfhelpcompany.com. So it's www.theselfhelpcompany.com. And on that website, I have multiple pages. There's a page for the book, there's a page for my podcast, and there's pages for other resources and things. And basically, on the podcast page, it has all the directories that I'm listed on. So you have your buttons for iHeartRadio, your button for Apple Podcasts. All the buttons are there depending on whatever app they want to use it on, or they could just listen right on the web page. So basically that's my home. That's where everything is, and everything links from there. All my social medias are on there and everything else.
All right, awesome. Ben, it was awesome to have you on. I love this conversation because I love when I'm talking to people who are trying to change lives. It's like invigorating at that point. It's not just I want more money.
Well,
yeah.
I appreciate your knowledge and your experience, and you've given me some really good practical knowledge that I can apply. That wisdom that I can't just get from a buddy who I'm just talking to randomly. So you definitely brought a perspective that I haven't had brought to me yet, and you really put things really into a nice little order for me, that I have them 3 practical steps that you wanted to accomplish with me. So I'm very grateful to have you take this time, and I highly recommend you to anybody who can use some business coaching.
Yeah, and if you know anybody, send them my way. I'm happy to do this exact same thing with them too. So
Yeah.
again, like I said before we hopped on, I want to have you back in
Okay.
3 to 6 months when you start having newer and bigger problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And
As you start having these issues, let me know, and I want to see these wheels start to grip.
Absolutely. And I'm going to send you a copy of my book, that way you can get a better idea of where I'm starting from. So that way, when I come back in a few months, you'll see the growth.
Yeah. So, but thank you so much. Once again, everybody, this has been Ben Povlow, right? I got Povlow right.
You got
I
it, buddy.
kept my handwriting, it looked like a V because my handwriting is garbage, but but it was awesome having you on theselfhelpcompany.com. Go there, reach out to Ben. I love your story. Thank you so much for being on. Thank you for listening to the Broken Salespeople podcast. Please take the time, subscribe, review, really helps the channel out. And until next time, go fix yourself.